Okay, there we are. Add to playlist. There we go. Okie dokie. Where's my microphone? There we go. Okay, let's jump in here. All right, so pretty basic. Can't find a place to hook my microphone. I know I wore a belt today. Okay, pretty basic day today in terms of the class content. So it is just review for the midterm, right? So the midterm is on, I'll just remind you of the details, right? The midterm is on Monday. It's open for 24 hours, right? So it'll open at midnight and it will close at 11:59. I'm giving you 90 minutes to do 5 short answer questions. Even though the class is only, 50 minutes, you can thank me later. So really straightforward in terms, like it's 5 short answer questions. Each short answer question is worth 10 marks. So the total grade is out of 50, covering, everything from the beginning of the course. So history, history, the generation stuff, and education. So those 3 units, everything we've covered so far. And again, the weighting of the kind of questions will be a little bit more towards the generations and history stuff because we spent more time on those. Sorry, I'm trying to think what people always ask. In terms of length, right, I don't have a set length or like a word count. My general advice is when you think you've answered the question well, stop. And that's the reason I don't put word counts on, because I don't want someone writing 300 words when they answered the question perfectly well in 200. And I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of relevant facts I should tell you. Any questions? And you can use the Slido here, or you can use your hand and just ask me questions and I will answer them. And if no questions appear at this point, I'll look at some practice questions with you and we'll kind of go from there and how you would answer them. I won't just look at the questions. We'll just all stand here and stare at questions. Be a shared experience, communal value. Is that a question? No, you're just stretching. Okay, I'm sorry. Got excited. Answer the questions better? No, I'm kidding. The 90s, but never 100s. Lower your expectation. No. There's always something that I am looking for. Sorry. I'll kind of answer these 2 questions together. Certain things I'm looking for when marking, is there a rubric that I check through the answers? So there is no rubric. I am the rubric because I don't need a rubric for my own tests, but I know what I'm looking for. Sometimes it's a little hard to explain because there's very particular things I'm looking for. Usually, I do have a scale, right? And I know what different kinds of answers look like in terms of grades. And there will be particular things that I'm looking for. And they're usually I'll put it, how did I explain it earlier today? I have a scale for 5 to 7, 5 to 8, which is how much of the kind of really relevant but just repeated information is there. So if you answer the question, you've got basically all the facts straight. Usually that's 6, 7, 8. And then for 9 and 10, right, those extra couple of marks, there's usually very specific kind of inferences, especially when I'm asking you in a question to connect 2 things, right? Because I'll often be asking you to connect ideas from kind of 2 of the different things that we talked about. And then if you do that really well, you can move into the 9-10. But yeah, I don't have we lose marks for accidentally putting in irrelevant information. Okay, so generally speaking, no. However, here's where this gets a little tricky. So I think I answered these questions. I'm going to go with I did. I am looking for very specific things. They're often very kind of detailed pieces, right? Inferential pieces of information you're putting together from different parts of the course, or very kind of nuanced things. So I know what they are, but it's hard to explain because they're very, very nuanced, and they're very, very, not minor. I think they're important details, but they're things that are easy for students to overlook in their answer. And when I see people getting them, then I know, there's just a better level of understanding there. I don't know if that's helpful. Is the open book midterm? Is the midterm open book? Is dyslexia I have now? Sorry. So as we're speaking here, I'm also running the speaker series in the Center for Criminological Research. So I had to start that and then run over here and explain to people how to turn it off, and how to access questions on YouTube and all sorts of things. Anyway, so I'm my brain is half in two places. Okay, is it open book? Yes, it is open book. You can use anything. We're not using any proctoring software or anything. You are left to your own devices. Do I give feedback on how to improve your next midterm? If you come to me and talk to me. So if you want feedback, I don't type in for every single person's questions. I think we're up at I don't know how many people are in this class now, 125. It's a big class. So me trying to give individual people feedback would kill me, and I trust that none of you want me to die before the end of the course, after which point I assume you're indifferent. But I can't give feedback to everyone, and frankly, a lot of students wouldn't look at it anyway. So if you want feedback after the midterm grades are in, you can come in. I'll go over each and every question with you and each and every mark you lost. Okay, so yes. What kind of format do you look for? Examples and definitions of terms. That's going to depend on the question. Examples are good. Examples definitely illustrate understanding, right? If you can, a good example. Bad examples demonstrate a lack of understanding. Don't use bad examples. Good examples definitely are useful. Even if they're examples that I used in class, you can definitely use those. So what kind of format? I mean, okay, I'll talk about the format. Actually, I'm trying to think. Here's what I will request in terms of format. And I'll just show you. I'll go to the next slide, right? So this question, like this one, right? This is one of my practice questions. You can kind of split this into three pieces, right? So here, and here. And usually I'll have weighting. I didn't write weighting down for this question, but usually I would put out of 10, this would be 2. This would be, let's see, 3, and this last part would be 5. But what I would like you to do, if you can do this, it's a huge favor to me and it's a huge favor to yourselves as well. Break this up into 3 blocks of text. Because there's 3 parts of this question. One of the honest to God places where people lose marks is making, and I know this sounds bad, but you've got, let's say, part of the answer to this third part is up here, and then part of it's down here, and then there's some more over there, rather than answering it all in kind of one block. So answering the definition here, right? You've got the definition, you've answered this last part, you start writing on using material from the course, suggest 2 reasons, and then you give me the definition here. I know my scribbles are so beautiful. And then you answer the second part, like when it emerged, and then as I'm reading and trying to mark your question, I'm having to work really hard to see where all the parts of your answer are. And sometimes I miss stuff, right? So you will do yourself and me a favor in terms of your grades if you structure it really clearly. And most of these questions you could answer in like a 2 or 3 part structure, right? So you can define the term, define. Then you can, say when in a separate line of text. And honestly, big walls of text make me sigh. And that won't affect your grade. It's just hard on me. And then, your material from the course, right? So material like reason 1, reason, and then reason 2, right? If you structure it like this, you'll probably get a better mark than if you have it all over the place. And I know sometimes calming your thinking down a little bit to be able to answer the questions in that structured a way can be difficult, because I know the student temptation, which is like, I'm just going to dump everything I can remember into this question and hope that some of those things are correct. And that's fine if you do that. It just requires a lot more work out of me. So if we want to talk structure, follow the structure of the question and, write. Anyway, you know how to write. Does that make sense? Okay. And you'll do me so many favors, and you'll do yourself favors. Because honestly, sometimes people come in to review and I'm like, oh, now that you explained to me what you were talking about, I can see where all of the, you answer this part of the question in this sentence, and that sentence. And when I put them all together, that is a good answer. But then if you don't come in, I'll never figure that out. So, because honestly, stuff gets lost, and my brain, there's 125 of you, there's 5 questions per exam. So you can calculate pretty easily how many questions I will be marking for this exam. And I don't have a TA. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my questions. Okay, because I'll explain to you in a sec how to answer that question. Is there a minimum word count? The minimum word count is the number of words it takes you to answer the question. So I don't put minimums and maximums, and I don't put minimums and maximums for a very specific reason, because people, like, honestly, maybe you answered this question, you're super succinct, and you just got it, and it's 150 words or 200 words, and I put a minimum 250 or 300, and then you write me 100 useless words. And then I have to read 100 useless words times 125 people. And then I start drinking, gamble away all my family income, get addicted to crack. It all goes downhill from that extra 100 words that everyone wrote. So, I joke, obviously, not a drinker. But it does, I don't want you to feel like, if you feel like you've answered the question, just stop. There's no word max and minimums. And I know you're so used to being told maximums and minimums that I've now messed with your heads, but I will continue to do this because this is how I work. This is how I roll. I'm also the professor who once tried to give no deadlines in a class for assignments. You just had to submit them whenever you wanted, and suffered because everybody handed them in the last day, all their assignments on the last day of the semester, which, by the way, turned out super great for me. Wasn't 2 essays and 3 short responses. Some people were like, here's my 5 assignments. It's like, great. I see what I've done here. Deadlines are important. So I try to be unstructured, and sometimes it bites me in the butt. And maybe my students, I don't know. Okay, what level of detail am I looking for in the answers? Because it's open book, I'm looking for a reasonable amount of detail. In class, short answer questions, I tend to be pretty loose on, but because you're taking this home and you have access to your notes and the slides and the internet and ChatGPT and any tools that you want to use, but seriously, don't give me any ChatGPT answers. But you should have a fair bit of detail in there. Okay, this one is an interesting question. I want to answer this. Would we lose marks for accidentally putting in irrelevant information? So generally speaking, I try not to. The problem is, increasingly with the use of AI will throw a lot of irrelevant information into answers, or really, really strange stuff that I would suspect the average student doesn't know. Like in my social religion class, ChatGPT will throw super obscure theories from the 19th century into answers. I don't know why it does this. It seems to think that those are really, really good explanations, and they're not. And I always see them and I'm like, okay, I barely know what this is, how would a student know this like obscure 700-page book from 1780 or something like that? So sometimes now when I'm seeing irrelevant information thrown in there, especially when it's elaborated on, or if it's like a theory, I tend to think that it's a chatbot, to be honest. So I would refrain from it as much as possible and say if you put in a theory, something, maybe you picked it up in psychology or one of the other lesser social science disciplines, like anthropology or political science or whatever, maybe just give me like a label that's like, hey, I got this from my psychology class, just so you know, this is not a chatbot, right? I actually do know this. And I presume if you care enough to do that, either you're tricking me with your amazing chatbot skills, or you actually do know something that maybe I think you don't know. So just like, honestly, if you're like, hey, I got this concept, oh, why do people turn to religion? It's terror management, though we don't talk about terror management in sociology as much. Oh, which I got out of my psychology of religion class, da-da-da-da. So increasingly irrelevant information looks like chatbots. That's my only warning on it. Sorry, I don't know why I'm harmonizing there. Do we need to bring current real world examples or just examples we've discussed? Yes, any of those is fine. If you have real world examples that you think are good, those are great. I love it. If you want to use examples we talked about, great also, perfect. The best ever. Okay, if we use the readings to answer questions, do you want us to list it as a reference? No. I don't want you to waste your time like doing a bibliography. You can just be like, in Twenge's generations, done, right? I'll know where it came from. That's good enough for me. You don't have to do a citation. Just tell me where it came from. Okay. If you get definitions from my slides, do you have to reference them? Or do you know because you created them? No, I will know that I created them. Trust me, I've been through this class enough times. I know everything about it. I know it better than my own children. Okay, should we write reason 1, reason 2 in separate chunks? Yes, please, God, yes. That would help me enormously. I can't tell you how the difference for me reading a well-structured question versus a wall of text. I will read them both, and I work really hard to find your answer in the wall of text, but it's just much harder. So if you structure it really well, honestly, I'm happier. I'm more inclined to give you a better grade because I'm just in a better mood, right? No matter what's happening in my day, I'm like, wow, what a beautifully structured answer, which just made my day brighter. This student is wonderful. 10 out of 10. Oops, I cleared something off. I don't know what it was. I meant to clear this one. Do I want full sentences or just detailed jot notes? Okay, I prefer full sentences. Detailed jot notes have occasionally gotten people into trouble because they put less than they should, like point form. You can do it, just make sure everything's there. And the tendency with jot notes is, okay, I will accept, sorry. Yeah, the tendency with jot notes is too much brevity and not enough detail, which sometimes will get marks taken off. So try to be detailed. Is it okay if you write your answers out in Google Docs and then just paste them into the desk? Okay, can I actually just recommend that everyone do that and not just write everything? Because occasionally Canvas does stupid things and it's usually not a big deal, but in like 1 out of 125 students, you will lose everything and have to redo the test, or I have to extend it for you. So 100%, you can write it down anywhere you want. Please don't share my questions on like Chegg or something. They're hard to write good questions. But, yeah, you can write them in Google Docs. That's fine. I'm not monitoring you. Like, you could honestly like copy everything and screenshot the whole thing. I don't have screen monitoring software. I'm choosing to trust you because I'm a fool, or I'm loving and trusting and just the best ever, but a fool. So, I'm not, you can do whatever you want. I actually recommend writing them in Google Docs just in case something goes sideways, or even it auto submits it at the end and an answer gets cut off. You still have it and you can show it to me and we can discuss. Okay. What kind of format? Okay, I think I answered this. Yes. Why are the dancing men there? Like Saturday Night Fever while you're doing that. Preferably, like you can use point form. The risk with point form is always that you're too brief and you don't put in enough detail. And then I'm like, not enough detail here. 4 out of 10 or whatever. Probably not that bad. I'm a pretty easygoing marker, I think, except for that one person who's like, I never got 10 out of 10. So whatever. Okay. Can the points on each question, like there's 2 points? What sentence mean? Should we write a sentence or two? Oh, I understand what this question is asking. Okay, never mind. Okay, it's a good question. So like where I wrote here, right, that this is like 2 points, this is 2 points, or 3, and this is 5. That doesn't mean you need 2 points here, right? It just means I'm giving you 2 marks. Here I'm weighting it because this is really freaking easy. When is fairly easy but slightly more important, so I'm giving you 3. And here, I'm splitting each reason into 2.5 marks each, right? So you don't have to write me 5 points here. I'm just weighting the questions like this, but it doesn't mean like, okay, there's 10 marks, so you need 10 points, right? For each of these, I'm usually weighting it more based on the content. Does that make sense? Okay. Hang on. Okay, yes, you can use Arnett for emerging adulthood because it is his term, and I always forget to cite him, but yes, it's his term. But Jeff, can we use ChatGPT to help give us ideas, examples, not copying it word for word, but use it to help get the ball rolling? I mean, I can't stop you. So potentially, just keep in mind that I am 100% going to structure the questions to make that as difficult as possible, because I hate ChatGPT. It is my greatest enemy. It's like a dragon that I'm fighting all the time. Okay, but Arnett, Arnett, emerging adulthood. Just to double check, there's no class on Monday. Correct. You do not have to come. Do we have to cite for terms we learned in lecture, even if we paraphrase? No, I don't. No. Just put it in there. Just answer the questions. I will know if I told you that it was there. Okay, hang on. Last question. Can we answer the emerging adult question? Fine. Keep it, I'm getting to it. Relax. Okay. So, define the term emerging adult, right? This should be really, really easy. So it's people, basically for our purposes, 19 to 29, right? Who are, and you can add not teenagers anymore, or not children anymore, but haven't hit the major markers of adulthood. And what, for example, marriage, children, home ownership, maybe career, depends. Established career. Okay. So that's a really straightforward emerging adult definition. And I took up the entire slide writing that because my pen writes real big. Don't just stop there. Okay, so that's really straightforward, right? I think. Hopefully. Hopefully we haven't gotten to this point and you're like, oh, what? Okay. For part 2. Oh, sorry, part 2. When I can follow my own script, right? When did the concept emerge? Time period or generational cohort? And here, easy one, starts to appear with millennials. Why? Okay, so it starts to appear with the millennials, right? Sort of in the 1990s to 2000s. Okay, now you can go straight from there into explanations, right? So, more training needed, right? So we talked about this in the education section, more training for jobs, right? We've kind of talked about this at different points, and you can say like, oh, for the baby boomers, you know, they went to the factory and got a job right out of high school, but for millennials, increasingly they need a 4-year degree, right? So that would be one factor. Okay. What could we put as another factor? Let's say here, we could go to Twenge, right? So let's go to Twenge, and we could talk about slow life plan. See, I'm drawing stuff from very different parts of the course here. One I'm drawing from education, one I'm drawing from slow life plan, right? Today we have less kids. Today, less kids. But each kid needs more resources. Right? So they need, you know, to do really well in school, they need to, you know, stay in school until they're 22, right? Because they have to go do an undergrad degree as a basic credential. You know, and so parents have fewer children, but they cultivate those children more and for longer, which extends that period of kind of youth well into adulthood, so they're not quite moving out. Yeah, Jenna.
So for the second part, when did the concept emerge? Is it enough to just say it's the millennials around 1990s?
That's all I'm looking for. So, you know, if you're like, the term emerging adult emerged in the 17th century with the invention of the printing press by the Duke of Brunswick, then you get no marks for that. Or if you say the baby boomers, right, then it'd be like, no, kind of missed it because they were getting married early, right? Oh yeah, so you could put, you know, things like, yeah, later marriage, you know, birth control. You can have birth control here, right? Which makes it possible for people to grow up slower and have that long adolescence, all this stuff. There's like a million. So there's a bunch of ways to answer this question. And this is one of the potential, I don't want to say, this is where it's really nice and open. You could pick a lot of different factors here, right? There's not one single way of answering this. There are ways to answer it incorrectly, clearly, but there's no single way of answering this, right? We've talked about a lot of factors, you know, that have probably made people grow up slower. So, you know, the whatever, right? Technology, the internet, jobs, you know, birth control, so you don't have to get married as early, blah, blah, blah. All this kind of blah, blah, blah is not a good answer, by the way. Okay, sorry. Does that make sense? People in the room are nodding yes. Friday, Frya. Okay. Frya. Typo. Friday, Frya. Okay. Yes, don't overthink the questions too much. All right. Friday, Friday, Friday. Maybe. Okay. How does Smith believe moral reasoning amongst millennials differs from moral reasoning amongst other generations? Okay. So this one you have to, and again, I've split this for 5 and 5, right? So here, again, structure it in two blocks. They don't have to be like full paragraphs, right? You need to worry about like an introducing sentence or anything, 2 blocks of text. So in the first one, you have to identify what his idea about the morality of millennials is, right? And here, right, the key thing that we talked about with Smith was that they are moral consequentialists. Now you're going to want to tell me what that means, right? If you just say, Smith believes that millennials are moral consequentialists, which means what? Which means, you know, when they think about morality, they are thinking about the impact on others, whether it benefits them, okay, etc. Right? So, and this would differentiate them from, say, the silents and the boomers. Oh, you could also say here that They don't view morality as objective, it's subjective. And you could say the boomers, the silents, and Gen X to an extent, see morality as based on me making a circle, something objective. My circle disappeared. Objective, right? On some external category. So there, I guess you could also say for the moral consequentialist, morality is ad hoc, right? It's in the moment. It isn't fixed. Objective and more fixed. Okay. So this question is probably a little bit more straightforward and less simple to answer. Less diverse to answer than the last one, right? There's fewer ways to answer this question. Okay. So you've defined, what a moral consequentialist is. You've said they're moral consequentialists according to Smith. You've said what that means. Okay, so that's for 5 marks. Now, the second part, again, I don't think it's going to be super difficult to answer. But if we talk about the second part, tired of red, I'm going to green. Green is a friendlier color. Right? You would probably say that the key philosophical trend is postmodernism. Right? And so what key philosophical trends have contributed to this type of moral reasoning? Right? It's postmodernism. Postmodernism, you could say, I think I mentioned Foucault. But you could say, additionally, despite not having read postmodern philosophy, I'm just going to say read PM philosophy, it's pervasive, or something like that, right? You could probably, I don't want to overdo it in my answers here, or I spelled that wrong. Pervasive, there we go. Right, and again, you could just get to this idea that, this subjectivity, this not having a set morality is very typical of sort of postmodern philosophy, right? Despite, never having read Foucault or Derrida. So, again, I'm just asking you to identify the right trend. Something like postmodernism, right? Which, if you'll notice, at one point is in bright neon letters on one of the slides, so it should be, pretty obvious, I hope. Okay, does that make sense? All right. No other questions. Forward. Am I? Oh, dear God, I thought I'd frozen. Okay. Okay. Now again, these are questions that I wrote and later rejected for various reasons. So the questions will be similar to this, but not exactly this. Okay, so according to Postman, what role did the invention of the printing press in 1440? What role did the invention of the printing press play in 1440? Sorry, I'm missing a word. Play in the development of our modern idea of childhood and youth. Okay, so again, here you want to talk, pretty simply, right? What does Postman say? And again, here I would split this as 5 and 5 for the first part and the second part. Okay, so what does Postman say about the printing press? Okay, so key to Postman's idea is that it separates adults and adult knowledge from children and children's knowledge. And it creates a requirement for training or education as the entry point into adulthood. Okay, so you see, that's pretty straightforward, right? You're just sort of repeating Postman's idea. You need to condense that kind of Postman argument down from, half a book into a couple of sentences. But it's not overly complicated. Okay, so for the second part, briefly describe the historical process. Okay, so here you probably want to say something like, it's slow. You know, it takes about 400 years to go from there to here, right, to where we are today. So now the process here is important, right? And specifically, you got to think like, what are some key kind of things that we get along the way? So first, you know, increase in schooling. Right, because we need more schools, and it's a kind of a steady development from from the 1500s forward. You can throw in that thing where, you know, I think it's like by 1560, you know, the Scottish Presbyterians are already advocating for public education. By 1660, there's blah blah. I don't remember the numbers. They're on the slides. You know, number of schools in England, whatever it happens to be, right? So. But the other thing you're going to want to, what you would want to say, and this is probably where the real nuance and distinction comes, where it would be like, okay, this is pretty good, right? That's probably going to get you like 7, 8, maybe. Where you would go for a 9 or 10 is the creation of childhood, right? Or the spread of childhood / spread starts in the upper classes. And only later, can't write at the bottom of the slide, oh no. There should be one T there, I'm sorry. Trickles to the poor. Specifically, you'd want to say here, but I won't write it. It goes to the poor when people who are rich and looking at their own children are like, hey, those little people working in factories, those are kids too, right? And you can say, right, this didn't happen until like the 1880s, right? So it's a long process from 1440 to 1880. Okay, anyway. So that, to me, that's the like nuance point where someone sort of, it's like, okay, yeah, it spreads slowly as education increases and industry increasingly needs more workers, right? We get more need for education, which means a longer period of childhood, and it starts in the upper classes and only trickles down later, right? And if you really want to wow me, where does it really start? In old Blighty, England, right? That really, we see this happening first in England and then spreading to the continent from there and to other parts of the world. Okay, does that all make sense? Have I terrified you yet? Are you feeling okay? Will I go easy on you? Never. No, always, but also never. So wait, do moral consequentialists view morality as subjective? Yes. Are these questions on your exam? No. There will be different questions on the exam. I like to ramble since I feel like I answered too short. Ramble well. I noticed that when you answer the question, it seemed short. I mean, you get full marks if we wrote similarly, but to that, but answering the question. Yeah, I don't need, like, honestly, I don't need paragraphs and paragraphs. And I'm saying a little bit more, but I'm also writing with my pen on a screen, right, which is super awkward. So I'm condensing it down. Give a little bit more detail than that, and you should be fine. Yeah, you don't have to put quotation marks, and you don't have to be like, source, Professor Brassard. Like, I don't care. I'm all good. Okay. Is this my last slide? I think it is. 7 minutes. All right. So, what technology or technologies were most critical to the changing social roles of women in the 1960s and 70s, right? Okay. Ayla, you've been paying attention. So, again, now, what you don't want to do in this question is go with general technologies, right? Because you could easily go like television, and people do this, right? Or something like that. This one is aimed specifically at women. And here there's probably 3 to 4 technologies that you would want to sort of cite. And if you're missing one of these, you would definitely lose marks. Okay, so the first one, birth control, right? That'd be the first one here. Happy days. And you want to say why, right? So this allowed women to separate sex from babies, which allowed, going to work, building careers, reducing the number of children, reduce the babies, number of babies, right? So it allowed them to take, on a greater role in public life. You can say that it allowed for more sexual experimentation as well, right? So women were in less of a rush to get married. That's a good piece for birth control as well, right? So it allowed them to pursue more education because, all that stuff. Okay, so birth control is central. And then, the washing machine, dishwasher, potentially the microwave, right? Now, all of these would link into a sort of a single reason, and that is it's an simplified social reproduction. And again, you want to give a little bit more here, but you would say something like, okay, so how it simplified the process of social reproduction, right? So you will want to say something like, prior to the invention of these technologies, a large percentage of women's time was spent doing the things that their families needed, to keep going day to day, right? To keep alive, to still have clean clothes. So they would have spent a lot of their time cooking, cleaning, cooking and cleaning essentially. Oh, you might want to put the vacuum. You could put the vacuum there too. The vacuum's a big one. Vacuum. The vacuum, right? All of these household technologies, in the case of the washing machine and dishwasher, automated household tasks. And the automation of those household tasks freed up a considerable amount of time for women. And what did they then use that time for? Well, education and work, right? They left the domestic sphere because the domestic sphere no longer required as much labor to keep the family going. So they then could use that labor time that they used to use, washing the dishes and washing their family's clothes with a washboard in a tub, to go to work and get paid, right? To get wage work. We'll say wage work is the key, right? Okay. So again, you have a bunch of technologies, and certainly, you have to have this one and some combination of probably 2 or 3 of these ones for this question, right? Probably if you left the vacuum and the microwave off, I'd still give you full marks because the washing machine and dishwasher are bigger, but definitely doesn't hurt to have the microwave and the vacuum, right? So, does that all make sense? Vacuum. Why is it a fencer? I don't understand. That's nonsensical. Sorry, there's these. Yeah, please, Jenna.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, so it wouldn't be good enough if you just said like household appliances or cleaning appliances. You need to specifically state the specific machines.
I would consider this as an argument to have, I would prefer you state what they are. Again, just it probably shows like a level of detail, like household appliances, okay, which ones and why, right? Because I guess technically the stove is a household appliance, but I don't know that it was as definitive as the washing machine, right? So yeah, I'd probably want the specific, like at least one, and really be like, hey, the washing machine really simplified women's lives because, no more washboard. All of a sudden, you could just throw your laundry in and go have a glass of wine, or I don't know. The 60s and 70s were a weird time, but yeah, definitely as specific as you can be, I think would be better. Okay. Good? Wow, I didn't think that would take all class. I was wrong. I am bad at talking short. I'm sorry. Okay. I will have that set up. If you have accommodations, expect to have those added on. I won't email you because this class is pretty straightforward. There's no proctoring or anything, but I'll add your time on sometime on the weekend. If you see you have accommodations and you look at it, and you're like, hey, I should have more time than that, don't start the exam. Email me, and I will try to get that fixed. Remember to put your...
I know. Oops. I like to think what happens happens. You know, this is what the world wanted for me.
It's all good. All right. It's Friday. Friday. Now I have to go enter 3 different exams for next week to make sure they're all online at the right times.
Wow. Thrilling.
And accommodations for like 70 different students.
Pat on the back.
At least Canada, I will say this of Canvas, is way better at accommodations than eClass was.
I
I-
like Canvas, honestly.
I only have to put them in once per term.
And then it just knows that for the person.
It remembers based on the
I
person.
love that. I wish that my accommodations would do that for me.
Have a good weekend.